we've talked a lot about Mary. In fact, the last closing line of that song we just sang was the Son of Mary. I've been curious, what did Mary know? How much did she know? And when did she know it? The reason I ask that is some verses, like in the 3rd chapter of Mark. Well, actually, I'll start with the 2nd chapter of Luke. When Jesus was 12, they were at the temple, and he got left there for 3 days, and the family decided that they better go back and get him. And they wanted to know why he was there and what he was doing. And we read that, that those in the temple were marveling at what he was saying and what he was doing. Why did Mary and Joseph not understand what was going on there? And then in Mark, when he started his ministry, we see in chapter 3, verse 20, it says, "Then he went home and the crowds gathered again, so they could not even eat. So when his family heard it, they went out to seize him, for they were saying, 'He is out of his mind.'" Now, I've just been curious, wouldn't Mary have known, who her son was? And if not, why not? And when did she know what she, and how much did she know?
Very good question, especially when you think about that there are groups that attribute to Mary right now omniscience and omnipresence. She knows where everybody is, and they can pray to Mother Mary, yet she never exhibited any of those characteristics on earth, which is really interesting. But that is a good question. What, how much, and when did Mary know? And it truly, just the short answer before we look at all these passages, it seems it unfolded with her too. I mean, she just was awestruck that she was going to get in on this, and God told her, and she said, "Great." But she did not comprehend. I mean, to understand the incarnation, still, we're trying to understand it, theologically speaking, how Jesus Christ could be all God and be talking to God, and that the Spirit of God, even the Trinity is very challenging to consider. So for Mary, I think she did pretty well, but it appears there's this unfolding. And what we looked at this morning, those 10 big events, they were just kind of being carried along with it. By the time you get to Luke 2 in the temple, obviously they didn't understand that Jesus Christ was headed for this teaching ministry. In fact, none of his brothers believed. That's what Mark 3 goes on to say, that none of his brothers believed. They mocked him. And by the time we get to John 7, if Norm would have added that, they said, "Hey, you're going to show off or do something at the feast?" And he said, "No, I'm not." And they were total unbelievers, as 1 Corinthians 15 says, until after the resurrection. And then they believed. So how much did Mary know? I don't know. There we go. How's that? But I do know she really knew the Bible, and it says she treasured. If you look in Luke, I see her growing. And in the last, it says that Mary treasured these things up in her heart. In Luke 2, right at the end there. Where did it go? Mary treasured these things up in her heart. And what I see is... it says in verse 51, but his mother kept all these things in her heart. And I really think she connected it all, Norm, when she stood at the cross. And you remember it said, "A sword will pierce through your heart too." And she was looking up at Christ, and I think that's what that Passion of the Christ. Did you notice the movie that that guy made a few years back about the crucifixion? That every time they pounded the nail, it showed Mary, going boom, like that he was Gibson was trying to parallel the fact that Luke said she treasured this up, and that Simeon said a sword is going to pierce you through. But I really believe that Mary didn't understand, because in John 2 she starts ordering Jesus around. He said, "Make him some wine." Mary said that, and he says, did you notice Jesus never called her mother ever? He said, "Woman." That was putting her in her place. "Woman, what are you asking me to do?" And I really think, Norm's question is good, I think Mary grew spiritually. She was saved, but she needed to understand. She wasn't perfect, and she grew. until, and if you know anything about church tradition, after the cross, John did take her to Ephesus. And she was in the biggest church of the ancient world with John the Beloved as the pastor. He followed after Timothy was martyred. John the Apostle pastored that church. And I think Mary grew and probably looked back and says, I can't believe the Lord picked me to do what he picked me to do. And what a blessing. But I don't think she knew very much, and I don't think she understood at the beginning what she was getting into.